Okay. This is fun. I feel like I'm in like a studio. My studio apartment.
Creating live broadcast.
Podcast. Nice. Well, it looks like it's working. We are live at brunch. We are live at brunch with Dr. Patricia and Lucinda Bibbs. So we're starting right on time. We're going to give people a few more minutes to join us if they can. We're trying a new timeout for this live at brunch. Did you know, Lucy? Because basically, my lovely administrative assistant, my social media executive assistant, Jen, noticed that it's a hard time for people to join on Thursdays at the 12:30 time. So we're trying this out as a new time. So it's live at brunch. And every now and then I'll be inviting experts in their field, like Lucy, registered clinical counselor, to join me and have like a really nice conversation, like a chat, right? About something that we're all experiencing to some extent. We would all benefit from learning how to upgrade our knowledge and our wisdom in this field. So if you're joining us, please feel free to put in your comments. We will acknowledge you and love you for joining us live. And if you're watching this after the fact, please feel free to add in your comments or questions, and we will monitor this event and answer your questions when they come up. So this is great. So Lucy is a dear friend. I'm so privileged to know you, and registered clinical counselor to boot. So lots of experience, assisting individuals in achieving their full potential, right? I mean, it's a beautiful line of work, and it's so wonderful that you do this. And what we're speaking about, a common thread for many people, women especially, but for all people, is the concept of stress, right? Yeah. There's always been stress in our lives, from everything from living in the modern day world in our ancient bodies to this new culture of like living in isolated silos in our homes versus like our tribal upbringings. And now we have this very unique, a series of events that are happening in the world that are really challenging us, providing us this challenge and this opportunity for growth with how we cope and deal with stress, right? And how we figure that out. So what we were discussing is that I'm just going to start off with letting you ladies know a few things about how stress manifests itself physically, and then Lucy will take over for the mental, and then like the how to get to the root cause of stress. Basically, what we're going to be talking about in the next half an hour is not just like what to do about stress, like have a bath, like a magnesium bath, and do a lavender oil, whatever. Those are great. Those are wonderful, and we need those. But I would consider those to be a little bit of a Band-Aid solution, right, Lucy?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because if you don't deal with the root cause of stress, like what is bringing stress into your life, like not the event, but how are you perceiving the stress? And all you do is the Band-Aid solutions. Yes, you will feel better in the moment, but that stressful event will keep triggering you, and you're just going to have to be Band-Aiding yourself for like ever and ever, right?
Yeah.
And so Lucy's going to be talking to us today about how to identify in each of our unique individual circumstances, right? What are the things that are triggering stress for us, right? Good morning, Donna. Thank you for joining us. Donna from Edmonton, right? Yay.
Good morning, Donna.
Good morning. Lovely. So yeah, feel free to put any comments, Donna, if you like, or any questions as we go along. And so the root cause of stress, and then once you find the root cause of stress, how do you dig it out and burn it up and throw it out, right? So if stress is like a weed that's growing from a root, all of our self-care is like chopping the weed off, but not digging the root out, right? So we want to dig out the root cause.
Yeah.
Yes, right, Nana? So first you need to recognize you have stress. So I'm just going to list, like as a doctor, I'm going to list like when I meet people and I hear their like medical complaints, these are things that trigger in my mind that they probably have a problem with coping with stress. So poor sleep, right? Tension headaches or migraine headaches, really tense muscles, especially around the jaw, the neck, the upper back, the lower back.
Mm-hmm.
And then it might even get so bad that they would get like a diagnosis eventually by a clinician of like a stress-induced disorder, like an anxiety disorder or something like that, right? But day to day, what that might, and also some people actually break out in stress like reactions in the skin, so like rashes,
Yeah.
eczema. Like I've seen stress-induced eczema. That can be a very bad one for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And infertility. So actually difficulty in getting pregnant or maintaining a healthy pregnancy through the whole, like, especially in the first
Mm-hmm.
trimester, that can be really stress induced due to the decrease in progesterone from the hormonal imbalance. So, and also like really heavy hemorrhagic periods that are really painful, because when you're stressed out, your magnesium levels go down and everything related to the body can be depleted. So really stress
Mm-hmm.
manifests in every single physical thing that you can possibly experience can be triggered or amplified by stress.
Yeah.
So Lucy, what have you seen in your practice in terms of like how people present with stress and they don't realize maybe they're stressed out, but the root cause is the stress? And then how do you go through the process of helping that individual understand their root cause of stress, uh,
Yeah.
how they can manage that?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Patricia. So a lot of those symptoms you mentioned, absolutely. It's such a long list, right? When we kind of start to create an awareness for ourselves in a way in which we experience stress, because I think stress is a word that's kind of thrown around, and we're actually, to go back, stress doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Right? I think it gets a bit of a bad rap. We naturally are always going to experience stress. Our body is wired to, kick us into action should there be, a threat or a change or a new environment that we need to be more attentive to. So that is like a healthy way. I'll give you an example. If we were presented with a test, for example, right? Okay, so we're naturally going to be feeling, elevated levels, right? Of, a healthy way might be motivation to study, right? So, stress doesn't always have to be a bad thing. However, it should be temporary, right? And it should be relatable to the event, at hand. So I'll give you an example of being a mother. My son can one day refuse to put his shoes on, and it's not a big deal for me, right? We go for our breathing, we give him options, he picks which shoes he wants, we go out the door. He could do the exact same thing the next day, and I become less tolerant, I'm angry, I snap at him, right? So I think it's understanding, right? How would I know if I was to start that day if I'm experiencing elevated levels of stress? What does stress look like for me? So then we're starting to address some of those symptoms. And this is that self-check-in and self-awareness, which we so rarely do, right? So self-check-in every morning. How do I feel today? Okay, my shoulders are feeling tight, right? I noticed when I got up in the morning, I immediately had the angst of the to-do list. Okay. I noticed my husband left the knife out, and that frustrated me, right? So we're starting to notice, like, okay, so today we're sort of getting triggered by things, right? A little bit more easy. So now I know I'm stressed. Now, rather than focus attention and energy on that knife butter, the butter knife that got left out, it's taking a step back again and saying, okay, what is this about? Right?
Yeah.
And then, I see. Okay, this is what it's about. And that could be, maybe a family member's unwell, right? Maybe you're changing jobs. These are all things that naturally we're going to feel stressed about, rightly so, right? And we want to lend ourselves that element of acknowledgement and self-compassion to those areas, and also have the level of awareness that we are going to be more reactive, right, to those pieces around us, right? Those triggers around us. So that's kind of where, we kind of come from the Band-Aid place of like, okay, I'm feeling stressed. What should I do? Take a bath, exercise. These are all wonderful things. But unless we really understand and attend to the root cause of that stress, we're constantly going to be teeter-tottering between stress. All right, a bit of exercise. Stress. Okay, I'll exercise again. Right? As opposed to sitting with, the underlayer of why that stress is really coming up for us.
Yeah. Oh,
If
that's
that
so
makes sense
true.
to
You
you.
gave some great examples.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't want to put your shoes on?
Yeah. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
So I would even come to, so we're creating an understanding, right? We're doing a self-check-in. We recognize what stress looks like for us because it looks different for everyone. When we talk about stress, we talk about like the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. So again, are we noticing that we're shutting down? Have we been ignoring emails? Have we been withdrawing from social? Right? Just that level. Oh, okay, maybe I'm freezing right now. What's that about? What's stressful in my life? Have I noticed I'm angry? I'm short-tempered, right? I'm not as tolerant. Oh, then I'm stressed. I'm in fight mode, right?
Right.
So rather than, oh my gosh, I need to be less angry, let's understand that we're angry because we're stressed, we're in fight mode, and then where's that stress coming from? Right? So again, always coming back to delayering back to the root cause of that stress. Now, when we get to that root cause, is it something within our control? Can we shift that? Right? So if we're feeling overworked, can we change that? What can we do to change that? What needs to change for things to change? I've been doing the same job for 12 months. I'm constantly, feeling overwhelmed, right? Can we change that? Do we need more childcare? Do we need a different job? Right? Do we need to cut our hours? Right?
Set boundaries with our work, right?
Exactly. So those are things within our control. So I encourage people, right, when you get to that root cause, is there something within your control you can change about that? Now, it might be something outside of your control that we can't change, right? It could be a person at work that we work with. It could be, an ill member of your family. It could be your house under renovation, right?
Yeah.
Then we want to acknowledge, that's something that's happening and it is stressful, right? And it's going to be there a while. So then our perception of it, right, and our resilience to it. So what is it I need to do now, knowing that the stress is going to be around, right? That I can place it in a growth mindset, like either accepting or a positive shift of perception. And what can I do to build my resiliency, my tolerance to dealing with this stressful part of my life, the pandemic being one.
That's amazing. Okay, before we get into building resiliency, which is so key, I just want to point out something. Like, I've been having conversations with women lately, and one theme that's been coming up is that many of us find ourselves in a situation where we perceive that we don't have control. But we actually have more control than we think. Like, a perfect example is, I was speaking to someone the other day who had a lot of stress at work, and she actually took a leave of absence from stress.
Right.
Okay. And in order to fill her spot, they had to hire 2 people to do her job. So here's the thing. She was doing her job. She's amazing at what she does. And so they kept giving her more and more and more. And all of a sudden, partly because she's incredible and partly because she wasn't, first of all, seeing her own value, right? Setting, having the self-worth to say, my life, this is my life. This is what I prioritize in my life. And you're kind of adding the work piece, and I have all of these other parts of my life that I prioritize. So either you give me the option to say, you can give this to me if you pay me more, or what, this is not within the scope of what I want to do with you because I have these other priorities. And setting these really respectful, open communication, healthy boundaries at your work, because your work thinks that in the short term, this is a great idea. But when you leave on a stress leave, or when you quit your job because you can no longer do this thing, then they've kind of that short-term gain for long-term pain, then they've lost an employee. And you can even say to them, I want to stay with you. I want to thrive with you. I'm in this for the long haul. And in order for that to happen, we can't have too many things, right? So especially with a lot of women out there being so successful and incredible and talented and amazing,
Yeah.
I think our challenge actually is in the power of saying, no, thank you,
Yeah.
you know, firmly but lovingly. So
Mm-hmm.
this is just to like to tune in, like to yourself. Like,
Mm-hmm.
is there a place, like as a mother, as a family member, as in your work, where
Mm-hmm.
you have allowed external events to kind of like be added to your to-do list, and it's burning you out, and in order to help
Yeah.
everyone in your life, you actually need to
Yeah.
let go, like detoxify,
Mm-hmm.
let go, right?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to interject that, because it was just a conversation I recently had with someone, and I was like, you know what, yeah, it's okay to say no and to set
Mm-hmm.
boundaries and to have more control than we perceive.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for bringing that up, actually, because
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that until you mentioned that, you know.
Such a great example, Patricia, and we could probably speak for hours just on this one notion. Especially with the pandemic, I'm noticing with clients working from home, companies obviously trying to, you know, cut costs and so forth where they can. You know, I could probably name 5 clients off the top of my head that are working close to 12 hours a day, right? And what is happening for them to not set boundaries around that? What is happening that that's okay? What culture, right, is happening within that company? One of the biggest pieces is fear, right?
Mm.
So fear is the underlining factor in why we don't set boundaries. What if something else happens, which adds to stress? We're constantly at the what if catastrophe mindset, right?
Yeah, what if they fire me? What if I don't get that promotion?
What if they fire you,
what if they don't
right?
like me? I don't want to be not
Right?
liked, you know?
I have one particular client, she says that I genuinely don't trust that anyone else can do my job, right?
Oh,
So we're here, we're overwhelmed, right? We've got, you know, adrenal fatigue and burnout, and yet we are still in that, and this is where we go to like a bit of the belief systems, right? Is, you know, I don't feel that I can let anything go. However, I want to feel better. Right? So
yeah,
we're kind of, you know,
conundrum.
getting ourselves in a bit of a den in there. So that piece of letting go. So when I spoke about, you know, if there's things in your life that you know are going to be stressful, right? We have a huge project happening right now in our home, and I know that I'm going to be stressed about it, right? Like I know it's going to cause me stress, and it's not a made up what if stress. The you know, the factors within the you know, the project are stressful. That's okay. I'm not going to fight with that. I'm going to be purely accepting with myself that I am going to feel slightly more stressed. But what am I going to do about that, right? I'm going to try and schedule more childcare. I'm going
Mm,
to probably schedule less social engagements,
yeah,
right? I'm
yeah,
going to share more tasks with my husband. I
yes,
could do it all. I could just carry on the same. But you know, that's when I'm going to get to, actually, you did a great post, my tipping point. Why would I
yeah,
want to push myself to see if I'm going to get there?
yeah.
Right?
You don't want to get
Stressful
to the
time of my
tipping
life.
point.
No, that's not my goal, right?
Yeah,
So
totally.
kind of, and that's like setting that foundation piece. So, you know, with work related, because I think that's the biggest, one of the biggest pieces coming up for people, especially in the pandemic, and same with motherhood. There is a fear around, with work, a fear around what's going to happen if I set that boundary,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
What's going to happen then? So I would again address the underlining root of that fear, because right now we're making it about, you know, work and the company and what are they going to do, right? They'll figure out what to do. They had to hire 2 more people to cover the role, but they figured it
Yeah.
out, right?
Well,
And
yeah, exactly. Hmm.
so, you know, what is this fear about? What am I scared what's going to happen? And we're just going to sit with that. I understand I carry that fear. That's okay, but I can still take action.
What are some of like the common underlying fears that you see, you know, women having around that? You know what I mean? Around the
With
difficulty of setting boundaries. Is it like fear of abandonment, or fear financial, like lack of money, or you know what I mean? Like, are there some
Yeah, I
root
think
causes of
it
fear?
could be a combination of those types of pieces, but I
Yeah.
also feel that we put unnecessary pressure on ourselves to prove ourselves.
Ah,
What are we trying to prove, right?
yeah.
This is where I find acceptance comes in so greatly, in a sense of, you know, it makes sense that I can't do all this work. right?
Yeah.
So I've been holding back, I've been stressing myself out, I've been burning out because I've got to prove that I can do this work and show up for my company. And then when I finally get to my tipping point and leave, I was proving something that was impossible, right? Two people had to do the
You
job.
proved this was impossible.
Yeah. So just recognize, am I working towards like a goal or something that serves me, or am I just pushing myself towards the tipping point? Right?
Yeah.
The
Right.
proving is a really big thing.
Yeah.
So this kind of ties into one of the points that I wanted to tap on within this discussion. Is, what can we change? Actually, one thing someone said to me once, or I read once, there is very little in life we actually have to do.
Oh, I like this.
There is
Tell me more.
there's so little that we actually have to do.
Okay.
Right, we start the day. I've got to get these groceries. Right, I've got to get I've got to get the kid to soccer practice, and I must mail this letter. In actuality, the kid could skip soccer practice. Right, he could.
Yeah,
It's
you
not
could.
ideal, but he could.
Possible.
Right, we could
Yeah.
post the letter a day later. Right,
Yeah.
we could not shower today. Right, these are all possibilities. Now, I'm not saying that these are where we're heading towards, but even just telling yourself that
Yeah.
is going to put you in that fight or flight state to like, okay, it's a choice, right? I'm choosing to shower, but this
Yeah.
was my choice.
Yeah.
It isn't something like this ghost haunting me, right?
Yeah.
With time and, resources and so forth. So
Yeah.
sometimes I find that that's that perception of mind shift, right? Of
Yeah.
there is very little, like with work, I'm so overwhelmed. I have clients that feel physically sick getting up in the morning to go to work,
Mm.
right? Have you used any of your personal days? No, right? There's so we that's a I always say pause, pivot, proceed, right?
Mm.
Pause where you're at, pivot, and I find looking out a window is a great way to do that. Right? Open up your perceptions. There are other things, there are other resources at our fingertips, even within the pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I had a client the other day, and she went through exactly the same thing. It sounds as your client. She finally she withdrew from work, and then she gave herself a return date, and she still wasn't well, but still returned, right? And then she finally got to the point where it was like, I'm not going to give a return date. I'm going to get myself well, right? A huge, piece of relief there. She worked with children. And she had a friend who is in the pandemic over in Ontario and is under an incredible amount of stress, I think was with a sick family member, and has 2 kids working from home.
Mm.
And now she's in this kind of place, right? She said, I can Zoom your children, right? And she's got all these activities to do with them, right? And so this is how being sometimes my clients say, well, I don't want to be selfish, right? This is how taking care of yourself can give to others.
Yeah.
So she's now in a position where she can help another mama out who's also under
Oh.
stress, who also might be under that kind of like closed mindset, like, well, no one else can help with the kids, and so now I'm stuck. That now has, this person over Zoom doing activities with her kid while she gets a little bit of a break, right?
Wow.
So there's, it's just an example, right? That
Totally.
there's options there. But the other piece I wanted to mention is, what actions now, and that's and tying into what do I need to do to make these actions happen, right? So what are my options are that I could quit my job, right?
Mm.
Or I could go on sick leave, or I could approach my boss. I could set better boundaries. And what do I need for that to happen? So boundaries obviously being one. Are there ever any other resources I need, right? Financial assistance, right? Friends, family, any additional help. But into that comes in like shedding this ego, right, of proving ourselves, and asking for the help, seeking the resources, knowing that we're not in this
Yeah.
alone.
And when it comes from a place of like confidence that what you're asking for
Mm-hmm.
is completely reasonable.
Yeah.
And it's to prevent the burnout, right? And I think like employers now, especially, they understand that word, and they actually like see that word in action. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe in the past, like if you went, I might burn out, they'd be like, what are you talking about? Now they're like, oh, okay, well, let's
Yeah.
like, So I think having like a confident, honest conversation with your employer. And if they're not receptive to that, then having an honest, radical conversation with yourself.
Right. Yeah.
About who are you serving? Like if your employer
Yeah.
is not even willing to listen and nourish you and care for you,
Mm-hmm.
why are you burning yourself out for that, right? And
Yeah.
so you
Yeah.
may not be able to make a shift right away
Mm-hmm.
financially, but when you realize you have a choice, as you say, I think it's the choice
Yeah.
and the decision,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like making the choice and then making the decision
Mm-hmm.
that this is the way we're going to proceed, and then being confident and comfortable with that decision. What
Yeah.
do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. We hear a lot of like, I have to do this, or I have to work, or I need money. Right. And so, we're getting ourselves stuck in this is the only way from A to B.
Mm.
Right. But I think if we first start with, well, what is it we actually want? And how can we start shifting and making decisions that align in getting us there? And a lot of that, again, comes from, accepting where we're at, lending ourselves, the compassion to elevate our self-worth in setting the boundaries to get ourselves to where we want to go. A really simple tactic with boundaries in the workplace is out of office email.
Oh, yes.
Out of office email.
Yeah.
Like my boss always texts me and emails me, at 6 p.m. and it's so rude because she knows I finish 5 p.m. and I've asked her before, and send an out of office email,
Yeah.
right?
It's not me, it's a machine,
Yeah.
right?
I'm
Yeah.
not, and it's helping them too, right? If you keep replying at 7, 8 p.m. at night, then they're setting up like, oh, we don't need an employee. This one's just going to work 3 hours extra for free.
Yeah.
So
They'll
they're going to keep
expand, right?
allocating the workload. Rightly so, right? They're in business. So, how can we tell them I'm worthy, right, of service, and this is how you're going to get the best from me, and this is how I'm going to get the best out of this. It's a contract, right? We sign contracts when we
Yeah.
start a job. So
Absolutely.
what do I want this contract to look like?
That's a
And
good
does it
point.
need to be readdressed? So just, a quick tip there for anyone with workplace. Out of office emails are a big one.
Donna's liking this one. Yes.
Yeah.
I totally hear you. So yes, Jen, yes, yes. Jen is really good at this actually, like putting the phone to rest, right? Like
Mhm,
actually just like putting the phone
mhm,
away. And if someone calls and you don't answer, that's okay, right?
mhm.
For all the person knows, you were in the bathroom, like you were with your children. Like
Yeah.
there are so many reasons why after hours you cannot answer your phone. Let them make it up in their minds, but as long as you're doing your amazing work, which you'll be
Mhm,
better able to do when you're not in burnout mode.
mhm,
And then there's the mothers, like the full-time mothers. My heart goes out to them, right?
mhm,
Because there's no beginning and end to their day,
mhm, mhm.
right?
Yeah, there
As in
really
like a
isn't.
work day. It's like the
Yeah.
work is like 24 hours
Mhm.
sometimes. What have you seen? Just some like little tips, if you have any,
Yeah.
for these mothers.
So mothers, I mean, the example that I gave with the mother asking for assistance and having a child, set up that session over Zoom, or that help with a friend doing activities with them over Zoom. For most mothers, that would be too much to ask, I find, right? So there's a lot of can'ts. Well, I can't do that, and there's no choice, and I feel stuck here, right? So, when I talk about sort of can'ts or stuck, absolutely, it is a non-stop treadmill.
Mm,
We are in a pandemic where we can't just have someone come over, from anywhere and watch our children, right? Um, However, asking for help, any way, which or form it needs to look like, is very challenging, right? I think as a mother, we feel like we have to just give, give, give,
mm,
and it's very challenging for people to receive. It is the greatest strength, right? We're limiting ourselves if we do not accept help. I always say we're not meant to be in this alone. That we weren't. This whole system was not designed to have one individual. Neither is it healthy, right, to have one or two caregivers raising a child.
Yeah, and when you say system, it actually is like thousands of years of the way that
Mhm,
children were raised and
mhm,
repeated over time because it worked. I
mhm.
think there was a research showing that a mother cannot hunt and like cannot gather enough food to sustain her and a child on her own.
Right.
So like we had to
Mhm.
survive in communities,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah. I hear a lot like I feel bad or they've got their own challenges or that's okay. We find ways to
Yeah.
exchange, from one to another,
Or not letting
right?
go of like someone else raising your child for a period of time of the
Hmm.
day, right? Like I think you mentioned before, like, but I have to be the one to do it.
Yeah,
No one
yeah,
can do it as well as
yeah.
I can. That's a limiting belief, I think,
Hmm.
right? In a
Hmm.
way. I don't know if
So
that's
I can give you an example. We had my son's birthday on the weekend and we went down to the park with people in our bubble and
ah,
it was a great time. And
lovely.
I have a 10-month-old and well now 3-year-old, and people there, whether it be my parents or friends, were caring for my children, right? And that is something that I feel, privileged, and humble enough to accept, right? That they can care for my children. They would like change a diaper, right? Take them for a nap while I, cooked and different things. And I think that for a lot of people, that's not something that comes to ease, right? Well, I have to look after them. They're my kids. I have to, right? So just shifting that, like it's okay. Someone else can, and can help if they're willing,
Yeah.
if they offer. If someone offers, oh, don't worry, right?
Yeah.
Take a second. Like, actually, would that help me?
Oh, you know what? That would be
Yeah,
lovely. Thank you for the offer. I
yeah.
accept your
I
offer of
accept,
help,
right?
right? And
You know?
immediately when you say that, like I don't know if you like even when I was saying like I accept your offer for help,
Yeah,
like I felt myself relax, even though
yeah,
I wasn't like actually,
yeah.
in the so it's interesting too, like that, like tuning into intuition, like when someone offers you help and you say no, you kind of tense up.
Hmm.
What if you leaned into it and said,
Yeah,
yeah, thank you, that would be
yeah,
lovely. And I would also kind of shine the light that our children were also wired to be raised by other
hmm,
people. And when we have opportunities for that to happen and we
yeah,
don't take those opportunities, we're limiting potentially
yeah,
limiting their expansion and their
yeah.
growth,
Absolutely,
right? Because it's
absolutely.
important to have those interactions. So
Yeah,
so Lucy, thank you so much.
yeah. You're so welcome.
Like I feel like we covered in like half an hour just this broad, this breadth of, like we talked about being aware of stress,
Hmm.
right? We talked about root cause, even
Hmm.
talking about like the fear, right? Like the fear
Yeah.
that we, like human beings, I think the fear of death, fear of abandonment,
Hmm.
fear of not being loved, fear of, and fear of death is tied into the fear of finances, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And then how to like some really practical solutions. And I think like when we bring up examples that other people are going through, it's so helpful
hmm,
because oftentimes we feel like we're alone,
hmm,
right? Like we're the
yeah,
only ones experiencing this,
yeah,
right? And knowing that we're not, in
hmm,
fact, it's probably a bit more of the norm than the exception these days,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's a sense of like relief with that. And then
Hmm.
these tips are not just lip service tips, like
Hmm.
these are things you should do, but rather, as you say, you have experience with people going through
Yeah,
this. You've seen
yeah,
the outcome of people taking these
yeah,
steps.
yeah. Yeah. So even just checking your narrative, right? First of all, we're aware of, are we carrying additional stress today? Because remember, stress now and again is helpful, right? It sets us into action when we need to be. If we're all kind of like with our head in the clouds, and a car was coming towards us,
Yeah,
we want to be able to activate that level of motivation, right, and reaction in that time. But it should be temporary.
yeah,
So if we're noticing that those kind of symptoms are coming up for us always, and having our phone and constantly being on call 24/7 is not helpful to that, right? Is how are we going to start setting ourselves up where we are consciously engaging? We didn't have to do this so much before. Life wasn't as
yeah.
stressful as it is now. So
Hmm.
now it's effortful.
Hmm.
Right, I'll say that it is effortful, and it becomes, effortful in integrating that practice and making it a habit, right, where it becomes a bit more comfortable. So,
Hmm.
being aware of our stress symptoms, noticing how we can activate like the parasympathetic, right? That restful nervous system, particularly on those days where we know we need it. Deciding what the root cause is, seeing if it's within our control, asking for help, exploring our resources, and always reminding ourselves that there is very little you have to do. And the other point is there is a resolution to this. I might not see it now, but there is a resolution to this. This is temporary.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, like sometimes we feel like we're caught in the middle of a storm and we don't have the perspective that the storm will pass, but how do you want to look like on the other side of that storm? And so setting those boundaries, but I think the first step is key, like that awareness. And what you said that really resonated with me, like the days where not putting on a shoe versus putting on, like, the response. And that to me, like the first few minutes of the day really tell me where I'm at with my stress. And you mentioned the freeze.
Yeah.
And then that's something that people don't realize, but when you numb yourself, when you start to say, I don't care, like, I don't care that my relationship with my partner is not ideal, I'm just numbing myself, or I don't care that my body is like revolting, I'm just going to numb myself to the signals of my body. And that can be very difficult because the numbness is hard to recognize.
Yeah, it is. So just noting those slight withdrawal symptoms, right? If I'm withdrawing, shutting down, engaging in numbing practices, right? Alcohol, otherwise, just recognizing.
Engaging in a numbing practice, like alcohol. That's interesting. I never thought of it that way.
There's a lot of those.
I look at the responses there. Yeah, I think we can all relate to that in some way. It's like I'm stressed out, and I'm just gonna, have my drink or my dessert or whatever that comforts me and helps numb me. That's beautiful. Okay. So thank you so much, Lucy, for
thank you for having me.
For your time. It's so precious, and I really appreciate that. And Donna, thank you for joining us, and we really appreciate the feedback. And I know you're a busy lady too, so making the time is like really precious to us. And for all of you that have been watching, thank you for your time. Hope you're having a wonderful day, evening, or night, whenever you're watching this. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Lucy. You can direct message her, Lucinda Bibbs. How do you, is it Lucy Christina, right, on your Facebook handle? Okay. Or get in touch with me if you want to know more. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And Lucy, thank you.
Thank you.
Miss you. So lovely to see your face.
And you. So wonderful connecting.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.